to see, just call me Jason Bourne. Residual disease, think you're an individual? Please, more like habitual tease. Yeah, I know how you did wheeze, a shell of your former self. Damn, I'll inform you myself. That joke only knew a fraction what I do, so after subtraction, what do you add up to? No more need to run. Victory sweet on my tongue, embraced by the sun. It ain't lonely on this podium, so you can live vicarious. There's no more use comparing us. The thought of repairing us, now that shit's hilarious.
Only laughter on his way up the ladder. Lonely had her only matter. She's before, but now he's after. Nice guy spin slash, running from his past. Better not stop, or the devil moves too fast. Long gone. Long gone.
And we are back. Like I said, that was the official music of the World Wrestling Podcast. That's my boy Flo Wood. Like I said, you can check him out on any musical platform: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Definitely go check out some of his other songs. Very talented guy, super cool. And I'm really thankful that he's allowed me to use his music right here on the World Wrestling Podcast. You can check him out on his website as well, flowwood.com. That's FLOOWOOD.com. And moving on here, the WWE lists 6 potential names for Kurt Angle's retirement match. We heard a couple in the chatty already, from John Cena, Rey Mysterio. Kurt Angle announced on Raw that WrestleMania would be his final match. He stated in an interview earlier this week that there were a lot of names thrown out there, from John Cena to AJ Styles to Samoa Joe to Drew McIntyre. He said, "You never know who it's going to be. I just hope that I do win and I have a great WrestleMania moment." Friday, the WWE posted an image on WWE.com asking fans about the opponent. Actually, it was on their official Instagram page. I apologize. And the people that were shown in this image were Bobby Lashley, Baron Corbin, Drew McIntyre, Shelton Benjamin, Samoa Joe, and John Cena. WrestleMania will be held at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey on April 7th. And you can catch that on the WWE Network. I'm going to hold off for just a moment longer before I get into my feelings on WrestleMania. But of those 6 guys, John Cena's honestly my number one pick to be the one to face him. Like I said, Kurt Angle was John Cena's first match in the WWE. It's only fitting that John Cena would be the one to fight Kurt Angle in his retirement match. And who knows, it could end up being a retirement match for Kurt Angle and John Cena if they did it that way. But honestly, what I think might happen, I've seen some people talking about it in some of my other wrestling groups, is that Drew McIntyre should be the one to face him and actually beat him at WrestleMania, thus cementing his rise in the WWE. If he just absolutely destroyed Kurt Angle and retired him, that's a big accomplishment for Drew McIntyre to be able to brag about. So definitely drop them thoughts in the chatty. Anybody listening in live, you can also email me at WWP, that's short for the World Wrestling Podcast, so that's WWP_happy@hotmail.com. If you have any suggestions on who might be the one to take on Kurt Angle, you can also follow me on Instagram at The Happy and Schizo Show. Follow me on Twitter at Happy the Clown 14. Type in Happy the Clown on Facebook. You see my big smiley clown face. There's a lot of ways you can get in contact with me. So if you have any suggestions on who Kurt Angle might face or any other topic that we discussed during the show, feel free to message me on any of our social media platforms. But moving on, Jim Ross came out this week and names one star who he thinks is the future of the WWE. Jim Ross said that with WrestleMania 35 right around the corner, one WWE superstar doesn't have a match at the biggest event of the year. And that is Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre, he says, I was shocked in a certain sense that McIntyre was not figured higher in the card at WrestleMania. He's the future in a lot of ways. Jim Ross would go on to say that I still think he's a big-time player. He's everything that Vince likes. He's a good-looking guy. He's well-muscled. He's in great shape. He works hard, and he's different. Jim Ross would go on to say, I think he's one of the key cogs to the future of the WWE without a doubt. And you can listen to Jim Ross's entire podcast on Apple Podcasts as well as a lot of other big platforms. So I completely agree. Drew McIntyre is definitely the future of the WWE, and he when he first debuted, I don't even remember what year it was. Vince McMahon came out and said he was the chosen one and that he was a guaranteed WWE champion. That didn't end up happening. We ended up seeing Drew McIntyre being in 3MB and then eventually leaving the company. He went on to dominate the indie scenes and has been an absolute beast ever since coming back to the WWE. So I completely agree with Jim Ross when he says that Drew McIntyre is the future of the WWE. He is, like I said, I hope he's the one. I hope he's the one to retire Kurt Angle. I think that would be a huge accomplishment that he can use as a stepping stone. Be like, I'm the one that retired Kurt Angle. He's a multiple-time WWE champion. He's a Hall of Famer, and I ended him. And go on to use that as the springboard for him to get into that Universal title picture. I say by SummerSlam at least, Drew McIntyre should have that Universal Championship. If he doesn't have it by SummerSlam, I think he should win it at SummerSlam. He's decimated Roman Reigns. He's destroyed the Shield once already, working on destroying the Shield twice. Ever since he's come back, he's been on the warpath, beat the shit out of Dolph Ziggler. He is hands down the future of the company, and I can't wait I hope they don't fuck up with him again and end up jobbing him out later on this year. We saw Jinder Mahal get that push early last year. He had the WWE title, and now he's in there Shanti and turned into a jobber again. they're not doing nothing with Braun Strowman. Braun Strowman was like super over, and they had multiple times that they could have given him the Universal title. The Royal Rumble being the last big fail on the WWE's part to give him that title. And they just keep dropping the ball. And I hope that's not the same fate that Drew McIntyre ends up falling into again. And Chad says, really though, if Samoa Joe comes out to face Kurt, he would lose his shit. Would you lose your shit in a good way or a bad way? I know they had some matches in TNA, but they've really never had a feud in WWE, so I don't see why they would put Samoa Joe in that farewell match. I just don't see how they can build up in 3 weeks to make that relevant. Kurt Angle's supposed to announce this Monday, tomorrow night on Raw, who his opponent's going to be. So, we only got one more sleep until we find out. So keep your shit together, Chad. We'll find out tomorrow, buddy. Jeremy says Stephanie and Charlotte in a 2 out of 3 falls Jello match. I mean, if WrestleMania is going to be a 6-hour pay-per-view, then I would definitely pay the $9.99 to the WWE Network to watch that. Stephanie McMahon, she's getting up there in age, but she's still got it. She's a MILF for show. I won't lie, I would hit it. I would hit Stephanie McMahon like it was the last lay of my life. But Jeremy says he thinks it's going to be Cena for sure. I'm really leaning towards Cena as well, but he's announcing it on Raw, so there is a big chance that it could be Drew McIntyre. But in closing here, it looks like this year's WrestleMania 35, they're saying it's going to be made up of 17 matches. If this is true, then this is going to be the longest WWE pay-per-view of all time. Once upon a time, WWE pay-per-views didn't go any longer than 3 hours. But now that's the length of a Monday Night Raw, so we've seen longer pay-per-views. Some of the WWE's bigger shows like Survivor Series, SummerSlam, WrestleMania have become absolute marathons. And this year's WrestleMania is set to be the biggest of them all. According to Forbes magazine, WrestleMania 32 had a runtime of 286 minutes. The following years had a runtime of 305 minutes, and last year's show was even longer again at 314 minutes. And I mean, if they're going to have 17 matches, so far only 7 matches have been confirmed. So, I mean, they still have 10 more slots to fill between the kickoff show and the main card. And, if they gave us a longer, solid matches, then I could sit through it and be happy. But if they're just going to give us a bunch of bullshit, squash 3-minute matches, or fill it with, dumbass promos, dumb backstage segments, or Big Show versus a sumo wrestler, or Big Show versus Floyd Mayweather.